Welcome to today's tutorial. Today we are going to be looking at lookup functions in Excel. So what are lookup functions? Lookup functions are functions in Excel that helps us to retrieve an information from a given data set. In Excel, there are 6 types of this lookup function. Namely, we have the VLOOKUP, also known as the vertical lookup function, the HLOOKUP, also known as the horizontal lookup function. We have the XLOOKUP function, we have the lookup function, we have the index function, and we have the match function. For this video, we're going to be focusing on 4 out of the 6 of this lookup function because of the version of Excel that I'm working with. So let's start with the VLOOKUP function. So what does the VLOOKUP function do? We all know that the VLOOKUP function, also known as the vertical lookup function, is a lookup function in Excel. So what does it do? The VLOOKUP function helps to retrieve the information you want based on the lookup value you provide, on the condition that the lookup value is on the first column of the table. Let me come again. The VLOOKUP function is a function in Excel that helps to retrieve the information you want based on the lookup value you provide, on the condition that your lookup value is on the first column of your table. If it is not on the first column of your table, then the VLOOKUP function will not. Alright, let's dive straight into how to use VLOOKUP in Excel. So I have these data sets, and this data set contains the state of each Nigeria, the local government, the population, its landmass, the region, the healthcare facilities, each state's GDP, and each state ease of doing business. So I want to look for the population of Delta State and the population of Kogi State. I want to retrieve the population of these states. So I can use the VLOOKUP function to retrieve the population of Delta State and Kogi State, provided that these lookup values are on the first column of the table, but they are not on the first column of the table. So I'll show you how to do it. So I'll begin by typing equals to VLOOKUP and then open my parentheses. The first thing it says is lookup value. So my lookup value is going to be delta. Now table array. Now since my lookup value is on the second column, instead of beginning my table array from the first column, I'll begin my table array from the column that contains my lookup value, and the state name is the column. The state name is the column that contains my lookup value, that is delta. So I've done my table array. Now the next thing is column index number. So what column index number means is that you should specify the number of the column you want to retrieve the information. So I want to retrieve the information from population, which is the third column in this case, since I started highlighting from the state name. So 1, 2, 3, the population is the third column. And do I want the approximate match or exact match? Well, I want the exact match, so I'll put false. So I'll close parentheses and hit enter. So you can see it has retrieved the population of Delta State 6,646,017. So if we check, we can see we have 6,646,017. So it's correct. So let's try doing for Kogi State. I'll do equals to VLOOKUP, and then what's my lookup value is going to be Kogi State. Now my table array, since Kogi State is found under the state name, I'll begin by highlighting the table from the second row, from the second column, since that is where the lookup value can be found. So I want to look for the population, and population is the third column, and then I'll still type in false, close parentheses. So you can see it has retrieved the population of Kogi State. So the next function we're going to look at is the horizontal lookup function, also known as the H lookup function. The H lookup function is a lookup function in Excel that helps you to retrieve the information you want based on the lookup value you provide, on the condition that your lookup value that has been provided, the lookup value that you have provided, is on the first row of your table. Now, if it is not on the first row of your table, then it won't work. The H lookup function won't work. So that's basically the difference between the VLOOKUP and the H lookup, because they both perform the same task, just that the VLOOKUP, your lookup value has to be on the first column, but in the H lookup, your lookup value has to be on the first row. Alright, so let's see how to use the H lookup value in Excel. So I'm still going to use the same data set that I used for the VLOOKUP. So remember that in our H lookup, the lookup value have to be on the first row. The lookup value have to be on the first row of the table. If not, it will not work. So I'm going to begin by typing H lookup. So the thing I want to do is that I want to retrieve the region of Delta and the region of Kogi State. I want to retrieve their regions. So to retrieve their regions, I can use the H lookup. Now this is how it works. You begin by typing equals to H lookup, and then you open parentheses. So in this case now, remember we said the lookup value have to be on the first row, and Delta is not on the first row, Kogi State is not on the first row, rather it is the region. If you look at it, it is the region that is on the first row. So our lookup value have to be on the first row, and so region becomes our lookup value. Then the table array is, you highlight the whole table. So I'm going to highlight the whole table. Then continue. The next thing you can see is row index number. And what does row index number mean? It means you should specify the row number you want to retrieve the information. So since I want to retrieve the region for Delta, I will check the row number. So these are my row numbers, and Delta can be found in the 11th row. So I'll put in 11, and then the range lookup is going to be false. So I'll close parentheses and hit enter. So you can see that it retrieved the information for Delta State. So let us do it for Kogi State. So we can do equals to H lookup. Let's try and retrieve the region for Kogi State. So the first thing is lookup value. So remember, in H lookup, the lookup value have to be on the first row. It has to be on the first row. So in this case, region, since I want to retrieve the region for this state, region is going to be my lookup value. So I'm telling it should, in this table, it should go to where region is. And then which table is it going to go to? I'm going to highlight the table that it is going to go to. So it's going to be all this table. Then the next thing is my, I made a mistake. Yeah, so the next thing is going to be comma. Now, the row index number. Okay, so what the H lookup does is that it will go to the region. Since I specified that region is my lookup value, so it now is going to go to region, and in this table, which is the table array, the next thing is that, okay, under this region, what do you want to retrieve? Do you want to retrieve from number 2 or number 3 or number 4? Well, I want to retrieve for Kogi State, and Kogi State is the 23rd row. So I'm going to do 23 and then type in false. So if I close my parentheses, so you can see it has retrieved the region for Kogi State. So the main difference between the H lookup and the V lookup is that in the V lookup, your lookup value have to be on the column, first column, on the first column, but rather in the H lookup, your lookup value have to be on the row. So it's more like as if the header should be your lookup value in a H lookup. So when you're using H lookup, your header the header of your table has to be your lookup value. The next function is going to be the index function. So what does the index function do? The index function is a lookup function in Excel that helps us to retrieve the information we want based on the row number and the column number we provide. So in using the index function, you have to know the row number and then you have to know the column number. Having these two, the row number and the column number, helps you to retrieve that information you want in the Excel sheet. So that is how to use the index function in Excel. Alright, so let us see how the index function works in Excel. So I'm still going to use the same data sets that I used for the VLOOKUP and the HLOOKUP. So to recap, the index function, what it does is that it retrieves an information from a table based on the row number and the column number you give it. So I want to retrieve the region of Benue State. First of all, I have to know what is the row number and the column number of region for Benue State. And the row number for Benue State is 8. As you can see, it is 8 Benue State. And for the region, the column number is 6. F is 6. So the row number is 8 and the column number is 6. So once I have the row number and the column number, I can now use the index function. So I'll begin by typing equals to index and then array. Array means you have to highlight the whole table. So I'm going to highlight the whole table. The next one is going to be row number. So we've already determined that our row number is 8 and column number, we've already determined that it is 6. So just close the bracket and hit enter. So you can see it has retrieved the region for Benue State. We can do the same thing for Yobe. Before we use the index function, we have to have the row number and the column number. So Yobe, the row number is 36. And since I'm looking for the region is F. So F stands for 6. So the row number is 36 and the column number is 6. So once I have the row number and the column number, I can be able to retrieve information from this table. So I'll begin by typing equals to index and then open parentheses. The array is going to be the table. So I'll highlight the whole table. And then the next thing is going to be row number. So we said that row number is 36 and the column number is 6. So hit enter. So you can see it has retrieved the region for Yobe Northeast, and Yobe is actually northeast. So that is how to use the index function in Excel. So let's look at the next lookup function, which is the match function. So what does the match function do? The match function is a lookup function that shows the position of your lookup value in a given data set. Now we have apple. Look at this fruit list on the screen. We have apple, banana, cherry, date, elderberry, and fig. So if I want to know the position of cherry becomes my lookup value. So since cherry is my lookup value, what I'm going to do now is just to impute cherry as my lookup value in the match function, highlight the fruits list, and then tell it to give me the exact match. So it will bring out the position of cherry, which is the 3rd position. So what the match function does is just to retrieve the position of our lookup value. Alright, so let's look at how to use the match function in Excel. So remember that we said the match function, the role of the match function is to retrieve the position of your lookup value in the data table. So these are my lookup value, Benue State and Yobe State, and I want to know its position in this table. So I'm going to begin by typing equals to match and then open parentheses. The first thing is lookup value. So I'm going to hit this and you can see my lookup value is going to be Benue, and then lookup array. So there's a difference between array and lookup array. When it is array, it is just the whole table, but you can see it is not just telling you array, it is specifying the array that you should highlight. So in this case, it is specifying the lookup array, and my lookup value is Benue. So I'll go to where my lookup value is and highlight only the column that contains my lookup value, since it says lookup array. So the next thing is the match type. Do I want less than? Well, I want the exact match. I want it to be the exact match. So I'm going to pick 0 and then close parenthesis, hit enter. So you can see it has retrieved the position of Benue state. So let's do for Yobe state. Let's do for Yobe. So I'll do equals to match. Let me know the position of Yobe. The lookup value is going to be Yobe. My lookup array is going to be the column that contains my lookup value. So I'll highlight only the column that contains my lookup value. Let me bring this down to just only the state name. And then the match type, I'm going to pick the exact match. I'm not going to pick the less than or the greater than. I want it to give me the exact match, which is 0. So I'm going to pick 0 and click enter. So you can see Yobe is actually 35. So that is how to use the match function in Excel. Finally, we're going to look at the index and the match function. So if you can recall, to find the index function, what we do is that we'll say equals to index, and then we'll put the table array, the row number, and the column number. But when it comes to using the match function, we'll say equals to match, and then we use the lookup value. We'll highlight the lookup array, and then we'll specify the match type. So in the index and match function, we are combining both the index and the match function. So when it comes to that index, you have to begin by typing equals to index and then open your parentheses, as you can see. So what you see, the next thing, you have to put the table array. So after table array comes row number. So instead of row number, as you can see, we substituted row number for the function of match. We put the function of match in place of row number so that the whole match function replaces the row number. So after you've put in the whole match function, then you continue by putting the column number, and that is how to use the index and match function. Alright, so let's see how to use the index and match function in Excel. Personally, I prefer using the index and match function to find any lookup value I want. This is because, I don't have the X lookup, so I kind of use the index and match as a substitute for X lookup. So, and I like this index and match function more than the VLOOKUP and the HLOOKUP because there's no restriction. If it's in the VLOOKUP, the restriction is that your lookup value has to be on the first column. If it's on the HLOOKUP, your lookup value has to be on the first row. But in the index and match, there are no restrictions, and I kind of prefer using index and match. So let's see how it works in Excel. So I'll begin by typing equals to index and array. So since there's no specification to this array, it's going to be the whole table. So I'll highlight the whole table. The next thing is going to be row number. So instead of row number, I'll substitute row number for the whole function of match. So I'll substitute row number for the match function, and my lookup value is going to be so my lookup value is going to be Kaduna. So I'm going to highlight Kaduna, comma, my lookup array. So in this array now you can see there's a specification. So it's going to be the lookup array. So I'm going to highlight the column where that contains the lookup value. Match type, I want the exact match, so I'll put in 0. So I've substituted the row number for all the match function, for everything that constitutes or that makes up the match function. So the match function will represent my row number. The next thing is the column number. So the column number is going to be the number I want to retrieve, the column I want to retrieve the information, and I want to retrieve the landmass. Let me shift this. So I want the landmass, and the landmass happens to be the 5th column. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So landmass is the 5th column. Since I'm looking for the landmass of these states, so I'll just close my bracket and it has brought out the landmass of Kaduna, which is 46,051 kilometers square. So let's try it for Ekiti State. Let's do the same thing. So I'll do equals to index, and then the array, since there's no specification to the array, is going to be the whole table. The next thing is going to be row number. So the row number I'll substitute this row number for match function. So I'll just begin by typing match, and then my lookup value. Of course, my lookup value is, what's our lookup value again? My lookup value is Ekiti State. So my lookup array is going to be the column that contains my lookup value. So I'll highlight everything, and then the match type is going to be 0. So I'll close my parentheses. So you can see, instead of putting a row number, I've substituted it for the match function. So comma, the next thing is going to be column number. So since I'm looking for the landmass of Ekiti State, I'm going to count the column for landmass, which is the 5th cell. Is going to be 5, and then close bracket, hit enter. So you can see the landmass of Ekiti State is 6,353. Wow, which is, so Kaduna is like close to 7 times larger than Ekiti State. So that is how to use the index and the match function.